Tracey Edmonds has created and produced groundbreaking projects for television, film, music, and digital media. She served as co-host for Extra TV for 3 years, where she earned an Emmy. Edmonds currently serves as CEO and president of Edmonds Entertainment. Edmonds is also the founder and editor of the lifestyle, health, and wellness media brand allrightnow.com.
Well, I really enjoyed our last chat, and I am looking forward to this one too.
Oh, well, thank you. So, we finished off talking about, we spent a lot of time talking about growing up and family, your mother, which was absolutely wonderful. And you talked about your evolution, your trajectory changed in terms of your career. And you talked about soul food, you talked about your publishing company, and then movies, but it really was soul food, the movie, which was 1997? I think is that correct?
That's when we premiered, yeah.
How that really sort of changed your trajectory and maybe just the way you thought about where things were going. So can we sort of talk a little bit about Soul Food, the movie, and why? I know it was a big hit, very popular, and just talk a little bit about that, and then where that led to, Tracey.
Absolutely. And Adam, forgive me, I can't remember exactly where we left off, but, basically Soul Food, just to recap, was my very first film.
Yes.
And so I was in my 20s at the time. I think I shared with you that it was kind of a crazy time in my life because I had also just had a baby. And so, I went on to the set in Chicago, and I think I just delivered maybe a month or two, prior to that. So I was a brand new mom, brand new filmmaker, and, really just exploring this new trajectory, in my life. And I think I shared with you before that a lot of what I do as a producer, really derives from my intuition, my taste, what I see up in my head and hope to manifest on the screen. And that was the beginning of me kind of feeling that.
Okay.
And so I had zero producing experience, when I did Soul Food. I may have shared with you that I was really blessed that the head of the studio, the head of Fox 2000, was a woman named Laura Ziskin, who was all about female empowerment. And, she and I really, really connected. So when I pitched Soul Food, she was really the only studio that believed in the vision that I shared with her, and she immediately greenlit the film. So, and she knew I had zero producing experience, but somehow, her gut was, that, she knew about my music career, and she knew I'd done soundtracks and music supervision and all that. And I think she really shared with me the belief that this was kind of the next chapter of my life, and she was going to be really supportive in opening that door for the next chapter. So, yeah. So so I went out to Chicago, and brought my baby with me, and my husband at the time, Kenneth Babyface Edmonds, also came out with me, and the two of us collectively, really kind of, partnered up on the vision. Him, he wanted to kind of handle the music side of the movie, and then I would handle the storytelling, and all the visuals. So very, very amazing chapter in my life because remember we got a big hotel room or hotel suite that was big enough so he could set up a studio there. Okay. So he had like a little recording studio that was set up in our hotel room, and he would literally kind of come to set every day, see and feel what we were shooting, and then go back to the hotel and write songs. And so it was really an amazing journey for me because, again, kind of going on my intuition, I hired as a costume designer, even a guy named Salvador Perez, who actually had done a lot of work for me personally. And I felt he was ready to go from being a stylist into being a costume designer. So I gave him his first job as a costume designer. And if you look up his credits, he's gone on to do, some amazing things. Sal actually did my wedding dress for my wedding. And if you compare my wedding dress to the wedding dress that was in Soul Food, you'll see some similarities. Okay. So it was really kind of going on my intuition. And, I think I had shared with you before, but if not, casting wise, going on intuition, I had actually pre-casted the film before it was ever set up at the studio. And so when I read the script, I could visualize actors and actresses in those particular roles. And most of them I had a personal relationship with. Okay. So I literally picked up the phone and called Vivica Fox, and said, hey, there's this character, Maxine, that you would be great. I'm going to send you the script. I think it's going to be a really special film. Would you please read the script for me? Same thing with Vanessa Williams. Same thing with Neil Long. And so, I kind of put this whole cast together before I sold it to the studio. And then it was a beautiful thing to get out to Chicago and see, some of my girlfriends actually play the roles in this movie, and see again what I had in my head being manifested. And so I did that with the casting and the costume designing. And then, the rest of my job as a producer is to make sure I hire, the best people that I think can fulfill the vision. So, I handpicked the production designer, and then hair and makeup and, and all that. And then, on the music side, again, we had Babyface, putting together the music. And then the wonderful thing is that I had an incredible director that, that I was working with on my first film. And so, George Tillman Jr. actually wrote the script for Soul Food and was our director. And this film, Soul Food, really was loosely based on his life. And so he was kind of the young, younger character, kind of watching all of his aunties, as he was growing up. And, he had a big mama that was the matriarch of the family that kind of brought the family together for Sunday dinners. And so thematically, there was a lot of the storytelling and the family that I could relate to, because, I had a grandmother, Versi Lee, that was the matriarch of our family. And I think I may have shared with you guys before, amazing cook. And so we so looked forward to going to my grandmother's house for her soul food dinners. And so when I was first reading the script, I was like, oh my gosh, this reminds me so much of my family. And, families, there are a lot of issues that go on within families. There's sometimes sibling rivalry, there's just beautiful family mess that we all have. No family's perfect, and we can all relate to that. But the fundamental glue that keeps every family together is just love. And that is what Soul Food was really about. Thematically, we felt that was a theme that could connect to every family, no matter what your ethnicity is, whether you're Black, white, Hispanic, every family, if you're a strong family, that family love, that bond keeps you always connected, no matter what kind of challenging times, you may face. So it was a beautiful, beautiful story for me to work on. It was a labor of love. I enjoyed every moment on the set, every moment with the cast. And, at the end of the day, I remember the last day of production, we had a big, wrap party. And so many of these films, after you finish production, you're ready to go. And you don't even want to have a wrap party because you're just like, oh my God, that was a hard one. I can't wait to get back home. We had so much love flowing, all those days. I think we had a 35-day production schedule, but we all collectively, from the cast and the crew, we felt intuitively that this was going to be a really special film. And so by the time we wrapped production and had our production party, we really did still want to see each other and still want to celebrate, because we really had a great time. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Now, you had worked with your husband, Mr. Edmonds, on music before, and this is your first movie together. did that, were there any challenges working with your husband on a movie?
You know what? I think people would assume so, and it sounds fake if I say no, but we, I mean, I could make up.
You can say no.
I can make up some problems just to make the story more interesting. But we really did. I think both of us really collectively as a couple felt like we were both working on something super special. So it was really, really fun. And, again, a beautiful time, in our lives because, we were so connected. We just had a baby. And then for us as this little family unit to go out to Chicago and film this movie together, he had never done a movie and neither had I, and so it was a great journey, for us. Okay. And then also too, like, thematically also too, like he was really close to his mother and, so he was a family man. So thematically, I think he really connected with the story, as well.
That's wonderful.
Oh, and I should add, I'm sorry, go ahead, Adam.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I just came across some pictures. Actually, I'm here kind of like going through archives and stuff like, on my weekends, trying to get things organized in my new house. But I came across some pictures from the premiere party. So I guess I should kind of like tell this in steps. But after you finish a film, then, you edit the film, put the film together and stuff. And so as a producer, we kind of felt like, I felt like we had, again, something very special, but you don't know as a producer if what you love and what you're proud of on screen is going to connect with an audience. Yeah. And especially on my first film, like there was no way, and I didn't have experience of like, oh, I know this is going to be a hit. I didn't have that experience. And so there was a lot of, still, praying that the film is going to work and everything. So we finished the film. And then we, turn the film into the studio. And so after you turn the film into the studio, then, they start testing the film. And they start testing the film to see how audiences react to it. Any producer that's done a couple films knows sometimes you have great tests and sometimes you don't. And so for me, and this was back in the day when they used to have testing actually at a mall, at a movie theater at a mall. And so we actually had our first test. I think it was out in like Cerritos Mall in Southern California. And the theater was packed. And so it was packed and we kind of like, as a producer and the director, we kind of sat way in the back so no one would see us. And we were like over in a corner and stuff. And so this was my first test screening. And so as the movie's playing, certain parts that are supposed to be funny, that you hope, an audience is going to laugh. And this is your first opportunity to see if something works or not. And so I remember sitting there like, and I know the scene is going to come up, it's supposed to be humorous and I'm waiting to see if they're going to laugh or not. And they laughed, and then, every scene that you hope is going to connect, I'm kind of observing the audience and they're actually connecting. And so I'm sitting way in the back and looking and, and hearing and listening and stuff. And it really felt good because it felt like, okay, we may have a chance here. It does seem like the audience is connecting with us. And so then the film's done. And if I recall correctly, I think we got a standing ovation. And so, which blew me away because we were not expecting that, at all. And then afterwards, you kind of go through what they have called focus, groups where like, some of the, the audience members, they stay after and then they ask questions and then they fill out test cards and all that kind of stuff. And so, again, my first experience going through this. And so as a producer, you're kind of waiting because they give you your film a score from 0 to 100 and you wait and see what your film scored. And so the scores came back in for us and we scored a 96, which was actually really, really great. And so, I was just kind of quiet because I didn't really know, how hard it is to score a 96. And then the head of the studio is like, okay, so let me explain this to you. The score is phenomenal. The score did really, really well. Congratulations. We're going to get behind this film and we're going to really market it and promote it. And they did that. So that was 20th Century Fox 2000. And we had a big premiere party. We did it differently because we had a hot soundtrack. And so we had this big premiere party. I think we were like at House of Blues, and we had artists from the soundtrack actually perform at the premiere for us. And it was star-studded. And so again, getting back to these pictures, so I found these pictures, like in a box the other day. And it was like all the people that came to the, premieres, all the pictures from the premiere party. And it's like Damon Wayans and, Queen Latifah and Forrest Whitaker and everybody in Black Hollywood, Regina King and everybody you could think of. And it was really, really fun. And so the film, little $7 million film, and, went on to gross, I think we almost grossed 50 million or something, which was great for a little tiny film, back in the day. And then this, that was back in the day of VHSs and video rentals. And so we sold a lot of videos and did really well, in the rental, and we ended up winning quite a few NAACP awards. And so it was a beautiful, beautiful first start to my film career.
That's fantastic. So I'm curious, Tracey, did you think, Soul Food obviously was, the people that went to it were predominantly people of color. Did you think that in terms of crossover, that there might be, or was there a crossover that you were sort of surprised about in terms of white audiences?
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you hit those numbers, especially back, like in the 90s, when it's harder to, hit those kind of box office gross numbers, you are crossing over. And so we were able to cross the film over, and they did all the, they gave us all the stats and everything. And so it was crossing into mainstream, which, was very wonderful. It was, something we had hoped for, but didn't expect. And so it did cross over into mainstream. And so we were super, super happy about that. And then after the film, I got tons and tons of letters that came into the office, and, people were, just very kind about what a positive impact it had on them, and just kind of making them want to reconnect with their families and all that kind of stuff. And so it was wonderful because we were also getting requests to do a sequel because they really wanted to see more of the family. And so, which is what kind of inspired me to try to develop it as a TV show.
Okay. All right. So what happens after this wonderful success? What happens next, Tracey?
Well, I keep going. And so on the film side, I kept going, with other films. I end up, I think my second film, I'm losing track. You know what I did? I forgot. Okay. So I actually I wanted to create, have this multimedia company. So we had, the film side. I wanted to get into television, and I wanted to get into management, as well. And so I started expanding Edmonds Entertainment. So, my vision was to create this multimedia empire that would cover music, TV, film, management, all of that. So we took we had a production, building. And so we had 6 floors, and we took it and just expanded the building and created all these different divisions. So on the Edmonds Entertainment film side, I branched off, and I had a mainstream film department. And then I also had an indie film department, because I also wanted to give indie filmmakers an opportunity to have their films made, and within a certain budget range. And so I started kind of looking at the world of independent filmmaking. I was going to film festivals and finding films and all that. So the film division had 2 branches: Edmonds Entertainment, that did the larger budgeted mainstream films, and then E2 Filmworks, which did our indie style films. And so from E2 Filmworks. I had a film called Have Plenty that was a little kind of like a cult classic film. And so it was a film, literally, not even kidding you, that was shot for $90,000 originally. We put a new ending on it. So by the time we put a new ending on it, I think the budget was still, around $100,000. And it was the darling, of a lot of film festivals and stuff. And so literally after we showcased the film at film festivals, at the Toronto Film Festival, Miramax was there, and Harvey Weinstein, who you may have heard that name. Yeah, he was there and saw the film. And so we ended up selling the film to Miramax Film and end up getting distribution through Miramax Films. And so that was the first film that we did under that E2 Filmworks. And we put a soundtrack together. The soundtrack went platinum. The film did really, really well for an indie film. And we launched that indie film division. And then we ended up doing another indie film called Punks, which was actually the first gay romantic comedy that had ever been made. And so a guy named Patrick Polk, who worked for Edmonds Entertainment, he actually wrote and directed it. And again, that was shot within a smaller budget, but was the darling of Sundance and won awards and all that kind of stuff. But we wanted to give filmmakers an opportunity. I'm so sorry about this ring. I don't know why this is doing this. I'm sorry. So we wanted to give filmmakers an opportunity to share their vision, and have their films made. And so we did that. And then on the mainstream side, I just kind of kept going, ended up doing a mainstream film called Josie and the Pussycats, which was based on a animated series and a comic book that I actually grew up, watching, being a child of the 70s and stuff. And so we took that and made that into a mainstream film. That was for Universal Pictures. I did a film called Light It Up, which was Usher's first film. And that was with Forrest Whitaker and Vanessa Williams. And I just kept going. And so creatively, I didn't want to, even though, urban films was where I started and a very, very important, platform for storytelling for me. I wanted to kind of branch out and do different types of films. So I didn't want to limit myself to only doing urban films.
So you were talking about, you'd had a sort of a place in urban films and you want to do more mainstream. And you mentioned Renee Zellweger. So what project did you work on with her, Tracey?
Yeah. So I wanted to be able, as a filmmaker, to make any kind of film that I personally enjoy to watch. And I didn't want to be limited to only urban films because, I watch all kinds of films, and one of the genres that I particularly have always loved is the rom-com, romantic comedy. So I began, kind of seeking out great rom-com scripts. And we developed one called New in Town for Renee Zellweger. And that one we ended up doing through Lionsgate. And that was a really fun experience for me. And so it was my first mainstream rom-com, and that featured Renee Zellweger and Harry Connick Jr. And so it was great working with them. And then after that, I kind of continued on. I did another one called Good Luck Chuck, which had Jessica Alba and Dane Cook. And so that one also was through Lionsgate. And so again, just trying to just kind of branch my horizons and not pigeonhole myself and limit myself as a filmmaker. And so I, continued on the film side, and on the television side, I also too wanted to kind of fulfill those requests that I was getting about soul food, to see more of the family. And so I went to Showtime and actually pitched them the idea of spinning soul food off into a 1-hour drama. And so we ended up doing that through Showtime. There was a guy named Jerry Offsay that was the head of Showtime at the time, woman named Perlina Ibowe, that was his VP. And so we pitched a soul food to Showtime, and, immediately got a green light. We were very fortunate and ended up putting together a really amazing cast, because we couldn't get the original cast back for the TV show. And so we had to kind of, find new faces to play those characters. But we're very blessed that we found talent-wise, a cast that probably rivaled the cast in the original movie. And so that was actually a big hit for Showtime. We ran, gosh, I think it might have been 6 seasons. And we're very blessed, and we won quite a few NAACP awards again. And we were able to break, a new showrunner, Felicia Henderson, who had actually never done a 1-hour drama before. She actually moved from the world of comedy into becoming our showrunner for Soul Food. And, the writer's room actually ended up, breaking a lot of writers also too, that continue to do some big things in Hollywood. So
thank you for sharing that, Tracey. But I want to go back for a second, because in terms of you're doing these urban films, are you considered a Black movie production company? Is that sort of how people are sort of initially sort of pigeonholing you?
Well, I think initially we were pigeonholed into that. And so my first agency that represented the company, they were constantly only sending us Black projects. And I remember talking to, my agent at the time and, saying, hey, I appreciate, you sending us scripts, but, we don't want to limit ourselves into only doing African-American projects. I said, I'm also a female, and female driven stories. I don't care what color the protagonist is, will tap into my wheelhouse. So, rom-coms will tap into my wheelhouse, and I don't want to be limited, and only looked at as an African-American production company for African-American projects. And so, and that was kind of a contentious conversation that I had, because, I had to hear back from him, well, that's why, that's really what people are looking at you guys for. And I said, well, you know what, if you really feel that, those are our limitations, then maybe you aren't the right agent for me. Yeah. And I actually switched agents at that time. So.
No. And that's, I appreciate you being honest about that. So would you say that was a monumental challenge to overcome that sort of stereotype of your company?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, switching agencies was during the time when I went from only doing African-American projects into moving into doing projects, working with people like Renee Zellweger and the Jessica Albas, and all of that. So that was a big decision. But again, in my head, I've always had this big vision for everything that I wanted to accomplish. And I never liked, having that, what is it, the glass ceiling, or never liked having the ceiling, because I always felt like, the world is so much bigger than that. My vision is so much bigger than that. There's so many more stories that I can tell if I'm not limited and pigeonholed into one category.
So I'm curious, at that time, Tracey, did you have, I know you mentioned, and forgive me, I know there was a woman who sort of championed you initially when you did Soul Food. At this time, as you're trying to branch out to mainstream, did you have any sort of champions who were sort of in your corner, Black or white, male or female, who were saying, I believe in your vision and I'm going to get behind you on this?
Well, at that time, I had referenced one person who's always mentored me also, and that's Bob Johnson. And so, Bob Johnson, Bob Johnson, creator, founder of BET.
Okay.
If I were to say, who in this industry have I been able to go to, for advice, who's helped mentor me? Bob Johnson has, and for me, he was always a huge icon, in this industry. Obviously, he founded the first Black television network, which is a huge success and continues to prosper today. But the fact is, he was a visionary. And so Bob had the vision to create the first Black network, and so he had that in his head and he manifested it. And so if anyone could connect to, allowing and helping and, open the doors for my ability to manifest, what was in my head, it's Bob. And so early on the television side of my career, I did a lot of business with BET. And so I created the first Black reality show ever. That was a show called College Hill, and so that was kind of me looking at the emergence of reality TV. I think at that time, the only thing that was on the air reality wise was The Real World, and I was watching that on MTV, and I went to Bob and the folks at BET and said, hey, are you guys watching what MTV's doing over here? This whole new genre of reality TV is being created. This is non-scripted, television that can be shot for a particular budget range that's much lower than scripted TV, but ratings wise, these shows are doing as well as scripted TV. BET, you should get into this business, and I know how to produce, and I can produce your reality stuff for you. So I created a show called College Hill, which was, all about following 8, African-American students, all living under one roof who are trying to navigate, emerging into adulthood, being a student, learning about relationships and, friendships and how to get along, with your roommates and all that, and really kind of watching, young Black, students go from being teenagers into adulthood, through this show. Yeah. And so we connected with, the HBCU system in our early incarnation of the show and really followed, the trajectory of African-American students as they were navigating college. And so we shot the first season, believe it or not, and this may not, I don't know if it'll sound like a lot of money or not, but for us, it wasn't a lot of money. We shot 13 episodes for $800,000. And so, which is not a lot of money. And so, so these were, like 1 hour shows for, a teeny tiny budget. And so I kind of took my independent filmmaking school, skills, guerrilla, filmmaking and applied it to guerrilla, reality TV making and stuff. And so we shot, that first season, because that first season was an experiment for BET. And so, Bob and Stephen Hill, who was running the network at the time, they kind of said, hey, this is an experiment. I hear you. We don't, there's no telling if reality TV will work for our audience or not. Here's X number of dollars. This is your experiment. Go produce a show for us and we'll test it and see how it does. So the ratings exploded on College Hill. And so it immediately became BET's #1 show, and really kind of opened their eyes and opened the door for the fact that this, reality shows were not going anywhere. And they were, a really, really smart piece of business for BET. And so we ended up airing Soul Food for I think 7 seasons. And we're actually rebooting it right now. And so we are doing the celebrity edition of did I say Soul Food? I meant College Hill if I did. But we're rebooting College Hill right now for BET and doing the celebrity version where we have African-American celebrities that have never gone to college and want that college experience and stuff. And so we partner with Texas Southern, and we've got the Nene Leakes and Lamar Odoms and Ray J's and Stacey Dash. We got a really, really fun group.
That's great. So were you doing this again, because the first part was about the movie business and breaking into the sort of the mainstream. So, and you talked about, Bob Johnson being your mentor. So while is all of this going on while you're trying to get your movies more mainstream, Tracey?
Yeah. And so one thing you'll learn about me, Adam, is I am a multitasker. And so I got a lot of stuff, a lot of pots cooking, at the same time. And so again, I had this multimedia entertainment company vision in my head, and I was manifesting it. And so if you were to ever come, we had a whole Edmonds entertainment tower, that we did with these 6 floors and stuff. And so like the sixth floor was, like all the film. And then we had a TV division, and then we had the management division. And I partnered up with Robbie Reed, who was an amazing award-winning casting director. And she and I started a management company together. So we managed people like Isaiah Washington and Loretta Devine and Rosario Dawson. And we had a huge Tracey Ellis Ross. So we had a really, really amazing group of really talented, beautiful people that we were helping to launch their careers and helping to guide them and everything. So that was another one of our floors at the Edmonds Entertainment Tower. And so I was busy. So if you saw me back in the day, I had this office, and it was like, like this, because I was like, okay, so let's see if we can book her in this film. And, and then I was like overseeing the music, and we still had the John B's cutting albums. We were putting together soundtracks. We were doing music supervision for films. We were doing TV shows, so it was really a thriving, booming time. And we were really the only Black production company, doing what we were doing.
And what's your husband, Mr. Edmonds, doing at this time as you're just, doing all these exciting things? Is he primarily then focused on music, or that movie experience? Does that get him very excited to be in the movies?
Well, he was very interested in doing the movies and stuff, but he really didn't have the time to handle, the day-to-day, creative side of movie making. And so we were, as husband and wife, we were kind of, partnered in building this entertainment empire. And so you'll see the early credits, like he always kind of took a credit, on our film projects and some early TV shows as well. But he was kind of more so focused on the music side of things. But like, for example, Josie and the Pussycats, that was another one of our collaborations where he took the music and I took, the filmmaking. And so Kenny was, creating the soundtrack for that as I was producing the film. And so he did that because he was also very busy at the time with, his record label, LaFace Records. So I had my record label, he had his record label, we were busy.
Yes. Obviously, it sounds like, and obviously it's true, that talent is the most important thing for you, to surround yourself with talented people. But as a woman, and as a woman of color, how important was it for you to maybe surround yourself with people who looked more like you versus more white people? Was that, what factor did that play, Tracey?
Well, you know what? Our foundation, creatively and behind the scenes, was always, African-American based. But, I never was the type of person though, like I was always inclusive. And so even though our foundation, and I would say both on our projects and at our office and our production company, I would say we were 90% African-American, but I was never one to, if I met somebody that was like super talented, I don't care what the color of your skin is, come help, come contribute, so we did have, one or two white executives. We had one or two Asian executives. We had one or two Hispanic executives, over the years. And so we were just all about, we were very, very much, we were a family on the personal side, fulfilling a vision. And also too, like on the business side, if you ever worked for Edmonds Entertainment or you talked to somebody back in the day, we were very much family-like. Like we were all young, people having an amazing time being creative and building things and making things. And, and so we had a great time. Like anybody that worked at the company, like we all look forward to coming into the office every day. We were there until very late hours at night. We did things on the weekend together. My executives, we took a lot of retreats because like we had such a great time together working. We also became very close friends. And so like the number 2 person that was on our film side of things back in the days, Bridget Davis, Patrick Polk, who I mentioned to you, was the writer and director of Punks, who also now is a co-EP on P-Valley and being, did some work on Being Mary Jane. He was he helped run the indie film division, but those were my friends. So we like also too, like, when we escaped and took a break from working and took vacations, they vacationed with us a lot of times. Okay. Bridget and Patrick, they went to Australia, with us one time, to the Great Barrier Reef. They went to Cancun, with us. And so Bridget went to London with me one time. And so, so we were just all like really, really young people, young people having a great time together and really building and stuff. So, and then we also, I should mention too, we used to also throw for the West Coast, Puffy had his bad boy stuff going on the East Coast, but for the West Coast, the parties that we threw were huge. And they were very monumental. Again, everybody looked forward to, if we had a film that came out, they looked forward to the premiere parties. We threw, the huge Christmas parties that were so much fun. We threw a lot of like Edmonds entertainment, parties that, again, I was just finding these pictures and stuff like, everybody in Black Hollywood came to. So it was a really, really fun time.
So you have all this phenomenal success and, where you are today. Talk about, some of the projects that you're working on that you're most proud of right now. You talked about a reboot of College Hill, Celebrity College Hill. What are some of the things you're working on now that you're really, really excited about, Tracey?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really busy. Adam, one of the things that I did during the pandemic is I developed a lot. So all that kind of quiet time when we were kind of stuck, at home, I really used that time wisely, and I developed projects that I shot in 2021 and that I'm still filming. One of the things, I continue, I had Games People Play, which is a scripted program on BET. Can't remember if I mentioned this or not, but it's a 1-hour soapy drama. And it takes a behind the scenes look at the world of the NBA, but from the female perspective. So, imagine what it's like being a power couple, in the NBA, and, you have to pretend like everything is perfect, for the cameras and at the games, but really behind the scenes, there's a lot of drama going on. And so, I think that's true for the entertainment industry too. So I felt I had something to contribute, to what goes on with those types of couples and stuff. And so, so that actually, we've done 2 seasons of that show so far for BET, and that did really well. The first season we had Lauren London, second season we had Carucci. And then also too, I'm about to premiere my first film for Netflix, which is a film called End of the Road. And that is an African-American family road trip thriller. And so it's a scary movie. So it's a
scary movie.
It's a scary movie featuring.
Is that your first scary movie?
Yeah, it's my first thriller. So we've got Queen Latifah and Ludacris.
Wow.
And so it's a family road trip gone wrong.
That sounds like that could go wrong. Ludacris, Queen Latifah. They seem like polar opposites. I don't know whether that's So their personas seem like polar opposites.
And they are playing sister or brother in this.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So So it's Brenda and Uncle Reg. So
so it's sort of like was it what was this that movie Family Vacation? Was that Chevy Chase?
Well, yeah. I mean, our family, is still a little down on their luck. And so without giving it all away, it's a family that's down on their luck that basically has to relocate.
Okay.
And so, on the trip cross country to go to their next destination, all hell breaks loose, basically.
Okay. All right.
So, but I think
when does that come out, Tracey?
that comes out in August. That's going to premiere on Netflix in August. I'm super excited about that one. Wonderful. And then in development, I also have a franchise of books that I'm really excited about called Invisible Life, that I'm working with HBO on. And so Elin Harris wrote these beautiful, amazing novels that I remember reading early in the 90s that just kind of like really changed my perspective on things. And so the protagonist in Invisible Life takes place back in the 80s, when it wasn't quite so easy to be an African-American gay male. And so it's really about how this guy, Raymond, had to live his life for the, one way for the public and for the sake of work and career and all that, but led this invisible life, as he struggled with his desires as a gay man and couldn't really be true to who he really was. And it's about his turmoil that he had to go through. And so it was a best-selling novel that sold about 10 million copies that I read early in the 90s. And had been chasing and wanting to make it either into a movie or into a TV series. And so we're doing it as a series through HBO.
No, that sounds wonderful. Yeah. So tell me from a business standpoint, putting on one of your many hats as a business person, you've got 3 different outlets, right? You've got formats. You got HBO, Netflix, and BET. So in terms of today's business, in the entertainment business, how do you sort of navigate those 3 different worlds in terms of, is one more lucrative than the other? Are you aiming for one more so than the other versus, Netflix versus an HBO versus, commercial television with BET?
Well, and I should also add too, like in development, I've also got a couple of Lifetime movies, and I'm also in business with Hallmark. And so, as a businesswoman, I understand the importance of every platform. Okay. And so, there are certain platforms that are experts at certain genres of storytelling, and there are others that are experts in different categories. And so I think it's really, really important to have healthy relationships with as many platforms as you can. There's absolute value and love, to my relationship that I have with BET. I have mad respect for what they've always done and what they continue to do. Whereas, HBO and the quality of storytelling that they do over there, has always been, a lofty goal in terms of a network that I really wanted to be in business with. And so I'm honored to finally be in business with them. Netflix, is doing some remarkable trailblazing things. And so, Lifetime, continues to really connect with the female audience. And so, I really, really value all of my relationships, that I have with every single different platform, because as projects come in, I'm always kind of looking at the project going, oh, this might be good for Hallmark. Oh, this might be good for Lifetime. There's just certain platforms that connect better with certain types of materials. So I think it's really important to have strong relationships everywhere.
And again, are the business models just a little bit different for each one?
They're a lot different, so, obviously, HBO probably is going to give me a much larger budget for scripted, series than I would at a BET, but, they're not going to have quite as many slots open for African-American programming as would BET. And so, same thing, Netflix, I was very blessed to I got my highest production budget that I've ever had on this film that I just finished with Queen Latifah and Ludacris. And so this was my biggest budget. So I keep, having relationships with all these platforms allows me to continue growing, as well. And it's kind of cool. This will be my first feature film that I've developed for a streaming platform. Okay. So all of my other feature films have always had theatrical releases. And so, right now I'm pretty sure we're probably just going to premiere, as a streaming movie on Netflix, which is actually kind of nice also too, because then you don't have to go through the anxiety of opening weekend. That's always like the scariest thing, your opening weekend numbers. So, but yeah, all of that comes into play.
So I'm curious, do you have a preference towards, obviously on Netflix, you can, they premiere shows. One of my favorite new shows is called Vikings Valhalla, and you can watch all 8 to 10 episodes, one right after each other. Where obviously on HBO or Paramount Plus, some of these other places, you watch it. It's a weekly. Do you find that there's do you have a preference for whether it's having shows that you can binge watch, or is it better to have shows that come out on a weekly basis?
Well, historically for my career, I've only developed television series for linear television, which means that, you have to wait for each episode to premiere. As the game is changing and streaming platforms are becoming more and more prominent, I think I actually prefer, for my personal watching, I prefer binge watching. And so I like to just kind of dive into the world of a TV show and focus in that world for the next X number of hours and just watch episode after episode after episode. And I think TV watching habits, are going more in that direction. So I'm actually looking forward to developing content for streaming that can actually be binge watch. So I think it's going to be really cool. And also too, again, you don't have to quite worry so much about those ratings, every week, which puts pressure on, producers, outside of creating content, you got to watch, your ratings all the time and all that kind of stuff. So it's less pressure for us as well.
So last question in that regard, in terms of commercial television, programs like whatever it is, NCIS or SWAT, do you envision that at some point they might produce those you could just binge watch? Is that ever going to happen on commercial television?
Well, on linear television, you mean we're normally
your networks, ABC, NBC, Fox.
Yeah, what they're doing, Adam, is a lot of those networks, their episodes are available through outlets like an Amazon Prime or through a Hulu, so you can either watch them live, each week, or you can save your viewing experience and wait till they pile up, sure, and then watch them through an Amazon Prime or a Hulu. And even I think a lot of the kind of Spectrum and DirecTV, style, outlets kind of offer you opportunities too, to kind of preview the previously aired episodes and binge watch. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think, the whole binge watching experience is just going to become more and more prominent. And that's going to be, I think, people's preferred way to watch, because all of us are so busy. And I haven't watched anything live in God knows how long, unless I happen to be on the couch on the weekend and just oh, let me scroll and see what's going on. During the week, no time to watch anything live. It's all about binge watching. Yeah.
So tell me then about, in terms of your keys to success, have you developed, you've got so many things that you've accomplished. Do you have sort of a roadmap that you sort of share with other people? Again, your keys to success. Is there such a thing for you?
Well, again, a lot of it is kind of vision, intuition, and then really hardcore work ethics. And so for me, I've always been a hard worker. And so, and I'm willing to put whatever time is necessary to try to make every single project that I do be its best. And I'm always in the trenches. And so I just finished College Hill, that celebrity reboot. And I remember during pre-production, I was helping to do the production design on the house. And so I'm like, I'm running around shopping and buying stuff and, and putting it all together and stuff. And so that's just kind of like, who I am. It's like, I'm in the trailer for looking at costumes and looking at what people are wearing. And I'm, reviewing all the photos before, talent travels to set and make sure everybody looks good. So I have a lot of attention to detail. Okay. And I think that is really, really important, that you care that much about your projects to really, truly watch over it. Like, I'm not the type of person that phones in a project. And anything that I even remotely have phoned in, which is rare, have been my least successful projects. And so, like, the stuff that I've really put my love and time and energy and care into have been my best projects. And so, one thing I can really, really say is, give it your all, give it like as much effort as you can, care about everything that you work on, pay attention to everything going on, and really, really, surround yourself with talented people. There are people that are such control freaks that they're afraid to work with super talented people and, as your department heads, because they don't want somebody, sharing an idea that you may not have thought of, or, they're just, competitive control freaks. And I've seen this happen in this business, but it takes a village, it takes collaboration, it takes respect for each other's ideas. And I think, in every project or with whatever company you work for, always remember that, and be kind in your communication. Kindness goes a long way. Respect goes a long way. That whole saying, do unto others as you'd like others to do unto you, because you never know when, someone that was your assistant, is running a studio in the next 5 years, and however you treated them as your assistant, they'll remember that when you go to pitch them a project. So those are the things that I incorporate into my business style.
No, thank you for sharing that, Tracey. And the last question today, maybe on a bit more of a somber note, but in terms of giving advice to young people about where we are as a society, in terms of people of color, in terms of women, you seem like a very optimistic person. So this may be a loaded question, but are you optimistic about the future with everything that's sort of gone on with race and sex in America in the last, obviously since the beginning of the birth of America, but certainly the traumatic times we've gone through in the last 4 or 5 years?
I'm absolutely optimistic, and there's nothing unique in terms of events that have happened in the last couple of years that were any different from events that have happened prior to a couple of years ago. And so these things have been going on, forever. And, now we've just brought more attention, on these events. But these events that have been going on, even though they're not favorable events, whether it's racism, sexism, all of those types of things that have gone on in the history of this country, we can't let those events stop us. We can't let those events make us feel like we're just victims here and we cannot live our best lives and we cannot achieve our dreams because the odds are stacked up against us. I have never, ever felt that. I think I shared with you in our earlier chat, that God always gave me vision God always gave me perseverance. God always gave me, energy. I didn't even know this until actually my brother told me this a couple of weeks ago. My name, Tracey. He said, "Do you know what your name means?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Look up what your name means right now." And I looked it up and I was like, "Warrior." And so I was like, wow, because I've always kind of like used terms that kind of correlate with being in a war a lot of times. Like I'm always saying, oh, we got to get in the trenches. I'm always saying like, we got to fight this. We got to do this, because I've always had that kind of like warrior spirit where I was always a fighter. I never wanted to let anybody stop me from what it is that I want to do, what it is that I want to win at, what it is that I want to succeed. And, it takes an army, and I'm holding hands all the time with everybody in my army or whatever. But I have instilled that same, energy into my sons. I have talked to, anytime I mentor someone, anytime I speak to a youth group, I have always told them there is nothing you can't do. Do not I don't care what the news tells you. I don't care what teachers tell you about how the odds are stacked against you. I don't care what anybody tells you. Like I am proof of the American dream. I came from, Carson, California, an all Black neighborhood. My parents split up. I was married by a single parent. I was, had a single parent mom that, ran most, my household, most of the years. I went to public school. There were so many ways in my life that I could have felt like a victim. I went through eviction notices. I went through our phones being cut off, and so there were so many times that I could just be, oh my gosh, I'm Black. The odds are stacked against me. No, like I had this, I was on a mission, to, manifest, a wonderful life. And, God has helped me every step of the way. And I've had a strong connection to my faith and a strong connection to God. And, I'm able every day to kind of keep manifesting and doing things, that, I never thought maybe as a little kid would have been possible, but there's still an opportunity for so many beautiful dreams to be fulfilled in this country.
Tracey, thank you for those wonderful and powerful words.
Thank you. Pleasure talking to you again.
It's always wonderful.
This is the Black Experience for all. If you like what you hear at the Black Experience, please consider clicking on the Join button to support our nonprofit. I'm Adam P. Kennedy. Thank you for joining us.